that through the seven trumpets have raised your consciousness. They have cast down the evil conscience, wicked conscience, and they are bringing down the wall down so you can go in. So in meditation, you can actually do this. And may I add something to this? Because I want you guys to know that these are scripture, backed up by scripture.
Yeah.
The book of Revelation, I don't know how many words it has, 500, 1,000, 2,000. Every one of them has been given a history over 2,500 years of writings. When we say trumpet, you can't interpret that the way that the world interprets that trumpet. You have to know what was the story of trumpets from the beginning. When it speaks of the sun, the moon, and the star, you have to find the sun, the moon, the stars in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
When it talks about Michael, you have to find where the Michael was mentioned. It's the only book that is mentioned other than the book of Jude. It's the book of Daniel. When it speaks of what else? Let's say bottomless pit. You have to find it in the Old Testament. And these are clearly are mentioned. The only thing is we haven't been able to observe these things. Now, I don't consider myself as a reader. I consider myself as an observer. I want to observe what's happening. I don't just read. I go out and I look everything. I observe everything. Okay? That's why when I read trumpet, I have to go and find where was trumpet mentioned. Now, I want to just show you one example so you can understand what are these things that we are talking about. Because the whole thing is the revelation of Jesus Christ. These things are never going to happen in your life. None of them. These are now realities. And without you knowing, you've been hearing a couple of trumpets this weekend. And I'm going to show that to you and prove that to you. Okay? So let's go to 1 Corinthians. Chapter 14 of 1 Corinthians. Chapter 14. These are the verses that we just so easily ignore. And these are the ones that are having the treasures. Look at verse 14. Now, this is the church of Corinth, which starts by Paul calling them carnal. And he says, when there is division among you, when you say, I'm of Paul, one says, I'm of Apollos, are you not carnal? He says, even some of you say I'm of Christ. He says, you are still bringing division. Because you're separating yourself as if I'm with Christ and others are not with Christ. And it says, when you're this way, you're carnal. The word carnal means fleshly. And later in chapter 13 says, being carnal is when you don't understand love. Because you're like a baby. Jesus said, John the Baptist came, he didn't eat, didn't drink, and they said he has a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, they say, wine bibber. And they say, they're like, what shall I liken them to? They're like children sitting in the marketplace and saying, we played flute and you didn't dance, and we did this and you didn't do that. So they are those who close their ears and they open their mouth when they were supposed to be silent in heaven so they could hear. That's what Revelation chapter 8 says. There was silence in heaven for about half an hour. These are the ones to whom the trumpets are given.
That's right.
That's good.
Nice.
That's the end of seal number 7, which causes people to receive the trumpets. You receive the trumpet is a message. You receive the trumpet when you are silent in the presence of God, which means you have no opinion of yourself. So he begins to give that to you. John says, I was in the Spirit, I heard a voice, like the sound of a trumpet. The Lord himself will descend from heaven with the loud voice, with the voice of the archangel. There was a war broke out in heaven. Michael, the archangel, the voice of the Lord, fought with the dragon. Did you get it?
Yeah.
So there is a voice. Now, he says, you are being carnal, and you say, I don't have this gift, and the other one says, I don't have that gift. And he says, don't you understand this is all about a body? Shall the eye say to hand, because I'm not hand, I'm not part of the body? Don't you understand we are members of one another? So we are as one body helping one another, growing, maturing ourselves in love. So he says, let me show you a greater way of operating. It's love. So when you are in love, you are in the body. And you don't bring any division. So he says, therefore, pursue love, and then desire the spiritual gifts. The word gift is not even there. It's the spiritual. Because chapter 2 of 1 Corinthians says, the carnal man does not, the soulish man does not receive the things of the Spirit, but the spiritual man, he constantly receives. He says, now concerning these spiritual things that I've been receiving, now I'm giving you, let me show you something so you can begin to grab the same thing. Chapter 14, verse 1, pursue love and desire spiritual, but especially that you may prophesy. For he who speaks in a tongue does not speak to man, but to God, for no one understands him. However, in the Spirit he speaks, what? Mysteries to God. When he says, when you speak in tongues, you are speaking mysteries to God. We've all been talking about the mysteries of God. Mystery of Christ in you, mystery of lawlessness, mystery of godliness, mystery of faith, every mystery of God, mystery of the Father and the Son, every one of those mysteries. So he says, when someone speaks in tongues, he speaks mysteries. Okay? Verse 3, but he who prophesies speaks edification or building up and exhortation and comfort to man. So when you go to the book of Revelation, he says the revelation of Jesus Christ, which was given, and this revelation of Jesus Christ is the word of prophecy. When you have a revelation of Jesus Christ and you speak it, you are prophesying over people so it could be fulfilled in them. So when I am prophesying, not to say you're going to have this and you're going to have that, that's amazing. That's a gift, spiritual gift. He says, I'm showing you a greater way. In love, you begin to have a revelation of Jesus Christ. You see everyone according to the revelation of Jesus Christ. You speak according to the revelation of Jesus Christ. And you're prophesying that just by speaking. You don't say, thus says the Lord. The Lord is speaking through you already. So you are prophesying. And when you prophesy, you are building up. Jesus said, on this foundation of revelation of I am the Christ, I will build my church. So when you prophesy the revelation of Jesus Christ, you are building the church. You're not planting a church, you're building the church, building it up into the fullness of the stature of Christ.
That's right. That's right.
Okay? So when you have been hearing today, you are being built up.
Yeah.
So he says, this comes out of mysteries. But mystery that is only in the form of tongues doesn't do anything to others. But when I begin to give understanding, then it becomes, so you hear that and you say, really, is this the truth? Yes, I believe it. So you just step into the word of prophecy that was released. And if you receive a prophet in the name of a prophet, you will receive the reward of a prophet, which means you will receive the fulfillment
Of that prophecy.
of that prophecy. Make sense until now? Okay, so he says, therefore, there has to be understanding also given. So don't come together only speak in tongues. Begin to prophesy, which means begin to give the revelation of the mystery that you just spoke. That's why you need interpretation. So you can have understanding, so you can give it to people. Now look at verse 4. He who speaks in a tongue edifies himself, but he who prophesies edifies or builds up the church. Jesus said, I will build up the church. Now he says, you are building up the church. Why? Because it's the Spirit in you. I wish you all spoke with tongues, but even more, that you prophesied. For he who prophesies is greater than he who speaks with tongues, unless indeed he interprets, that the church may receive once again edification, being built up. Verse 6, but now, brethren, if I come to you speaking with tongues, what shall I profit to you, unless I speak to you either by revelation, by knowledge, by prophesying, or by teaching? Even things without life, the word is soul, even things without soul, whether he's stepping into symbolism, yet he is being spiritual. Okay? He is going into symbology to express the mysteries of God. So he says, even things without soul, whether flute, harp, when they make a sound, the word is voice, when they make a voice, unless they make a distinction in the sounds, how will it be known what is piped or played? So he says, when you speak in tongues without interpretation, you're just like somebody that is playing the harp. But there is no rejoicing. There is no harmony. There is no understanding coming out of it. So that means when I give an interpretation of the mystery, that becomes a revelation to you. So he compares that to playing an instrument.
Yes.
Okay? So, verse 8. For if the trumpet now makes an uncertain sound, who will prepare for the battle?
Or the war.
The word is the same word, war.
Yeah.
He says, if I'm standing here and I'm the trumpet of God, and if I don't clearly give you a message, which one of you will prepare himself for war? Because one of the points for the trumpet was to actually give the announcement that we are about to go and conquer. When people finally, after 40 years, they went into the border of the promised land, God said, you need to blow the trumpets for 7 days and never speak a word. In the last day, there is going to be a shout, the voice of the archangel. Then the wall will come down. Then you will step into the promised land. So he says, now when I preach and I teach, if I just tell mysteries and I don't make things clear to you, you're not hearing a clear trumpet. But when you begin to hear the clearance of the message, the clarity of the message, you begin for war. What does it mean? Before that, you didn't even know you have an enemy. You're just hearing, what is he talking about? But when you have that consciousness of, oh my goodness, that land belongs to me and I have left that desolate. That Canaan is mine and I've been in wilderness while the flowing milk and honey are in this promised land. Why am I doing here? And it says when the trumpet begins to sound, people get up and they say, let us go. The Lord will give us this land that he promised to us. So the book of Revelation has 7 trumpets. Those who blow the trumpets are those who have been silent in heaven for half an hour. They have heard the mystery, they understood it, they get up, now they are given the trumpets and they blow it. But if you don't hear when it's clear or you ignore it, what you do, you just... Okay, didn't he say the Lord himself will descend from heaven?
Yes.
Didn't he say with the sound of a trumpet, with the voice of the archangel? He says when you don't hear the message of the one who is a trumpet preaching, you're just missing the coming of the Lord. He just came and left and you didn't notice. He came to you like a thief. So when the mystery of God is revealed, you are hearing a trumpet.
All right.
Okay, I'm going to jump in on this.
Sure.
Could I?
Please go ahead.
I
Absolutely.
want to say something about this.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Please,
It's really good. It's something we discussed on Wednesday. And even I think if you were here Sunday, we were covering, in Ephesians where it says that you are to no longer walk as the rest of the Gentiles in what? The futility of your mind, right? That word futility, somebody remember what that meant? Voidness, empty, nothing,
Yeah.
the absence of everything, right? It's not that it's filled with something you can't see, it's void. The substance, let me say this as a comparison, and I want to draw to those elements that Masood put up there, and then he made this comment about these are all delusions. I want you to see this. This is really, all this is important. Wouldn't you like to have just this conference focusing on the book of Revelation? Go through this thing. Maybe we'll do that, right? So we're just going to keep them. We're going to cancel their tickets to Toronto. Anybody in there with me? Sorry, guys. Nothing going on next week. No, isn't this so important? Have you ever heard the unfolding? What was that, Chris?
You're quarantined.
They need a lengthy Florida.
Oh, quarantine, okay.
Yeah, believe me, tried. Dan and Kathy had to go.
You know, we are the virus.
Yeah,
We will contaminate everyone with life.
darkness does not exist. You have to see this. Darkness is the absence of photons or light.
Yes, that's right.
Light exists.
That's right.
Yes.
Darkness is just a description of its absence. We tend to think they're equal and opposite. They're not. One is the voidness of the other, and one is the filling. Right? Same is true for. Let's look at this even in the sense of heat. There is no such thing as cold. When you're cold, it's because there's the absence of the vibration of subparticles, which is creating what? Heat. So again, cold is the void of heat.
That's right.
Darkness is the void of light. So what do you think death is? Death does not exist. It's an illusion.
That's right.
In fact, none of these exist. The false Christ, the false prophet, the dragon, they exist in the absence of truth.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah.
Truth is the substance that when it's there, it sets you free from what?
Yeah.
The illusion. And we think we're fighting them.
That's right.
You ain't fighting. Listen, this is all bringing everything into the light. Are you seeing this now? You're not having these spiritual battles per se against these entities that are equal and opposite entities of what you think are the good and the bad. That is, again, a pluralistic view where he said, no, I'm bringing all this to your understanding. He said the truth will set you free. That's it, just the truth.
Pastor Ben, does it not say somewhere in the Bible where that the saints come together and say, is this the man that we are so afraid of?
Yes.
The devil that we're so
It's the illusion.
Yeah.
It's the illusion. I had this conversation. Somebody said, well, wasn't there an angel of death? I said, you watched the Ten Commandments. Cecil B. DeMille told you that. There is no angel of death. In Exodus, God says to Moses, at midnight, I will come upon the people. But what you do, and here's the power of ascribing what we've been taught to everything, the filter, is that I watch that movie and then I apply it to my theology or whatever, my belief system. And so so eloquently, so beautifully done, and I do mean, in all seriousness, we really do need to have some time focused on Revelation, the book, because, and I love what you said, it's not, Rose, I think you said, you don't go through this necessarily in a Bible study format. Let's study verse 1, verse 2, chapter. That's not the way it's written.
Right. Yeah.
And people, when they read it like that, it just doesn't make sense. Because you have the man-child in this chapter, and like you said, then the dragon's released, or whatever, it just gets, but when the Spirit takes what is a multidimensional book and places it into a place where we can see and understand, it all surfaces in your life.
Yes.
But here it is. All of this is the illusion of Adam that has become the reality of those who have been imprisoned into what? Futility.
Yes.
He says, no longer. Don't think like that no longer. Then it goes on how that futility, that voidness is filled. And it's filled with what? Life and truth.
Yes.
That's my 2 cents.
That's awesome.
Does that mean
Beautiful.
evil didn't exist until Eve bit into the fruit? Only good existed at the time?
That's true.
That's true.
Yeah.
Short answer. Next question.
You're not going to get away with that.
Next question.
So I was hoping that you could tie in Revelation and the last trumpet to Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 50, and to the end, when he says that is going to be the sign, the last trumpet,
Right.
twinkling of an eye, and not to toil in vain or to feel that way.
Sure. Let's first look at 1 Corinthians 15 so everybody's on the page. Yes. So, let's read chapter 15, verse 50. Now this I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, nor does corruption inherit incorruption. Behold, I tell you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, for the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. Okay, so he just said, I tell you a mystery. Chapter 15 of the book of 1 Corinthians. Because in chapter 14, he said, whenever you speak in tongues, you speak mysteries. Now he says, but I tell you a mystery.
That's right.
Chapter 14, he said, there are mysteries. Chapter 15 said, I tell you a mystery. So when in the context of chapter 14, he talked about the mysteries, he said, now the mystery needs an interpretation to become a revelation, an understanding. And that makes that to become a clear trumpet. So now here Paul says, I'm giving you a mystery. And the mystery is that we shall not die. So he's bringing the completion of the revelations. The completion of understanding. Why? Because the last thing that you see being thrown into the lake of fire is death. Every one of these things are before death. Pastor Vince said that all these things are illusion. They are non-existent things that have driven us. It's the void of truth inside of us that has created these imaginary things. And we are in the fear of that which is unseen, which doesn't exist. Make sense?
Yeah.
So in chapter 14, he says, we guys need revelation of truth. And he says that comes out of the love of God. Because if you pursue love, the mysteries will become revelations.
Hallelujah. Yes, yes.
Okay? And the end of Revelations is that death is the last enemy. In the same chapter, he talked about death being the last enemy. But then he says there is a difference between revelation and manifestation. Revelation is that which is being revealed to me. Manifestation is that which is being revealed through me.
Yes.
Go there, Matt.
Manifested through me.
Go. Take off.
So that's why Revelation chapter 12, when we have the last trumpet being sounded, it's not the end of the story. it's the place that finally the spirit, which wars against the flesh, has risen to sit in the place that it was supposed to sit. Now, if I live by the Spirit, I shall put to death the deeds of the body. And the Spirit shall give life to the mortal body also. Do you know that everything that we read in the book is written already about everyone, but not everyone walks in the fullness of all of that? That's just because we don't have the understanding of these things. We read, for example, Romans, and we don't know what portion of our life he is talking about. Once he says, you were saved, but at another point he says, but we are going toward the end of our faith, the salvation of our soul. So that's why when we say the Spirit gives life to my mortal body, it doesn't happen automatically. That's why the few verses before that, Romans chapter 8, verse 11, if it says, it gives life to my mortal body, before that talks about the thoughts of the Spirit. He says, the carnal mind is death, but the spirit, to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Correct translation, spirit thoughts are life. Okay, so if the Spirit gives life to my mortal body, that means spirit thoughts are giving life to my mortal body. That means the Spirit has become the thought process in my being, not anymore that which the flesh causes in me to be raised into what I believe. Not the sensory realm anymore. Not what I feel anymore, but what is being revealed to me. So through that process, when the understanding has come, when the Spirit has heard, I'm the heir, not flesh and blood. The Spirit must possess the body, not the body possess the Spirit. Flesh and blood cannot inherit the promised land. The Spirit must possess the promised land. What does that mean? It's the Spirit that is the heir. What is being given to the Spirit? A house. What is the house? The body to live in. So 1 Corinthians 15 says, flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God. That means you have to, guys, be raised into a consciousness of, I am a life-giving Spirit. And the life-giving Spirit inherits the promised land. So he says, now, if the pattern we have in the Old Testament, which was out of Egypt into wilderness, into the promised land. He says, they stayed here. In fact, it says, God was not pleased with them because their bodies fell dead here. Why? Because God spoke to them about this, that they could inherit. Right? So, but he says, where I'm sending you to is called Canaan, which has 7 nations already occupying this land. So you must go in and drive them out. That's the man-child being born out of the womb of the wilderness in Revelation chapter 12, entering into the promised land and casting out every beast that is in this realm. So the revelation is amazing, but the manifestation is much better.
Yes.
So we are not, Paul says, if I just preach, if I don't get what I'm preaching, I'm deceiving myself. In 1 Corinthians chapter 9. He says, because no athlete actually when he competes in vain just to go into, he says, everyone goes for the crown. But not everyone gets the crown, only one gets the crown. He says, I'm giving you this analogy to show you when you run in such a way that you gain it, that you will win the prize. He says, that's why even I myself discipline my own body so that when I have preached to you, I myself will not be disqualified. So that means I will not deceive myself only by revelations, so that I can come and preach to you and I have a good feeling about being able to preach these things. No, I'm running this race on my private time. When I'm alone, I still go on. I'm searching this out and I'm seeking, I'm going in, I'm allowing the Spirit to get me into the process of the manifestation also. So chapter 12 is about the death being cast out in the place of being reigning in us, so the spirit man can raise and the Spirit can begin to give life. So death is no longer having dominion over my body, but the Spirit is having dominion over my body, and the Spirit now can move my being. The Spirit becomes the source of life. The Spirit sits on the throne of my life. So that's the next story in the book of Revelation, after chapter 12, that when we sit in that place as the Spirit man, which means the Spirit has overcome finally, is the spirit that was suppressed because of lies. Now all of a sudden the Spirit comes up, and the Spirit begins to actually remove everything that was in our land. That's the story of once living here through the Passover lamb in Egypt. Here God said, you need bread unleavened, so that when I bring you to the border, you will not be disobedient to go and come back again saying we can't possess this land. But you here, without going in, without having the knowledge of good and evil, you say God is able to make me to possess. Yes. So that's, he says, now you need 7 trumpets. This is that which is important when we talk about meditation, because the 7 trumpets, he says, are the ones that can cause the wall to come on and they can go in. The 7 trumpets are that which causes us to go in. Now, the 7 trumpets were blown by 7 priests in the story of basically going from wilderness into the promised land. And the priests were told to take the Ark of the Covenant with them on their shoulder. So you take the Ark, and with the Ark you step into the waters and they will open up.
And the ark is the promise.
What is the ark? The ark of the covenant of the promise. So you realize you have come here and it's God's covenant of promise with you that you may inherit every promise that is being given to you. It's the work of the priests that through the 7 trumpets have raised your consciousness. They have cast down the evil conscience, wicked conscience, and they are bringing down the wall down so you can go in. So in meditation, you can actually do this. Because in meditation, you're going to the secret place. Okay, because I don't want to end here, let me just explain this. Maybe in one session I can go into details. But this is the story of meditation. You guys can see here?
Yeah.
Okay. When we have the ark, when they had only the ark, they didn't have the other parts of the temple, the tabernacle. It was because in wilderness they had a tabernacle, and God said, basically, put away the tabernacle, only get the ark on your shoulders and go in. Okay? Like the tabernacle of David didn't have the holy place, didn't have the outer court. It was only the ark in a temple of skin. in a tabernacle of skin. Okay? So now, this is the story. There was an ark, and on top of this, this was the mercy seat. This is the ark. What is the ark? The ark of covenant. What is this called? So we put mercy. What was the story of the two cherubim? This is amazing if you just listen to what I'm about to share with you. I will share it in details. But Hebrews, never you read about cherubim in the Bible what they are. Never. Nobody tells you what the cherubims are. But it's there.
What?
Hebrews chapter 9 says, even the earthly tabernacle had, even the first covenant, we're talking about the Ark of the Covenant. He says, even the first covenant had a tabernacle which had two parts, the holy and the most holy. And he says, in the first part was the lampstand and the showbread and all those things. Inside was the Ark of the Covenant, covered with the mercy seat. On top of it, the cherubim of glory, of which of these things we cannot speak in details now. So he leaves us there. What are the cherubims? Yeah, but let's see in the context of the book of Hebrews what they are. So when God gave a promise to Abraham, he confirmed that by an oath in the book of Hebrews. That by two oaths, that by two things, immutable, unchangeable, the heir of the promise can have a full assurance of what is being promised to them they shall inherit. Because he says, every man, when he gives a promise for confirmation, he takes an oath. Because the oath is the end of all dispute. Thus God, determining to show the immutability of his counsel, confirmed his promise by an oath. And he said, I take an oath in my own name, blessing, I will bless you. Multiplying, I will multiply you. What removes the doubt? Now, you didn't hear the story. When God gave a promise to Abraham, aren't we talking about the covenant of Abraham? Aren't we talking about the covenant that is basically the new covenant, that is that which was from the beginning, and the law only came and it was removed? So the covenant that was made with Abraham, through Abraham, the covenant that God made was the covenant of promise, not the covenant of the law. But he says people constantly doubted this. But God didn't want people to doubt his promise. So he said, if doubt comes, so I give you a promise and doubt comes, I give you something beyond temptation or doubt. So even after my promise, when there is a temptation or doubt, you can have something beyond temptation and doubt called the oath. Okay? So you have the oath, yeah. So you have a promise, but then a negative thing comes, but God says, let me give you an oath. So you can have now two things that have sandwiched the temptation. So you don't anymore live only by promise, but by promise and oath. So you have two unchangeable things. And he says this gives the heir of the promise, of the inheritance, fully assured. Why? Because when the second voice came and he said, did God really say, you will not anymore go to the promise, you will go to the oath.
Yes.
And you crush the temptation.
Yes.
Okay? So, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall dwell under the shadow of the Almighty. by two immutable things, he caused you to dwell in his presence.
Yes.
You have the ark that can take you to the promised land, and this is the ark. It's called the throne of grace, covered by mercy, in the place that you can sit, which is under the promise of God and under the oath of God. He says, I will speak with you here.
Oh, boy.
So never again a temptation can speak to you.
That's beautiful. Yes, 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 yes.
That's called meditation. When you sit on the covenant of the Lord, and when you sit on his mercy, and you cover yourself with his promise and with his oath, it is impossible not to hear God. Because God said to Moses, when he instructed him to build an earthly example of the heavenly tabernacle, which is you, by the way, he showed in flesh what is inside of you. And he said, this is what you build. And then he said, this is that which causes me to work. This is where you can hear my word. Jesus said, I only do what I hear my Father is speaking.
Yes, yes.
So you are the heir of the covenant. So you need to be sitting on the ark of the covenant. You need, let me put it in a simple language. Sit on the covenant. That's your place. And sit in a place that your conscience is cleansed because of the blood, because of the mercy. And cover yourself with promise and the oath. That causes you to be in the secret place of the Most High, and nothing can enter into the secret place.
Just so that you know, and this is, and when you can, this is Word of Christ International Church. But the sign confuses people. Because what does the sign say? The name of this place was never to be Word of Christ, but the place where he said, I will meet with you there, and I will speak with you there. And I never fully understood why we were led to call this the meeting place and not just simply Word of God, because it has caused confusion for 15 years on letterheads. And, are you this or are you that? And the Lord said, just call this the meeting place. Because you will experience the time in which I will meet with you there and I will speak with you there.
Amen.
El Moed.
Yeah.
And today, if this hasn't been the unfolding of that and such, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Wow, yeah. I'm glad we did Q&A. Even though David had 2 questions, it still was really good.
Is there any other question? Okay, any other? I just want to know how many questions we have still. All right, so, and you have one? Okay. I just want to say something quickly for the last trumpet. Very quickly, because it says in last trumpet, mortality will put on immortality. When you go to the book of Revelation, it says in the days of the last trumpet.
Yeah.
Okay? So the last trumpet has days. So when you go seal, has 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seals. In the 7 seals, trumpet starts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In the 7th trumpet, you have 7 bowls. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the days of the last trumpet is the 7 bowls.
Yeah.
When mortality put on immortality, that's what Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, in the last trumpet, mortality will put on immortality. As Masood said, it's not just it's not the end of the story, because after the bowls, you still got a couple of more chapters to go. So that's why the days of the last, so the last trumpet. So the seventh seal is this. Right? So basically when you read the book of Revelation,
Yeah.
these will help you to have a clear on yourself. Okay, here.